Welcome to Wayne.com for another edition of Inside the Zone alongside Tom Davis of the News Sentinel. I'm Glenn Marini. And Tom, it seems pretty crazy, but we are a third of the way through the regular season as far as high school football goes. We have some answers to our questions. And I think even last Friday night we found out that we have more questions.
Yeah, I was going to say.
About the rest of the season.
Speak for yourself on that. I think with each week we're getting more and more questions because sometimes there's some up and down performances and sometimes some teams really stun you and sometimes they don't. But it's been an entertaining season so far. Not a lot of tremendous games, but some close games, some competitive games. And I think one thing that's really jumping out of me this year about the SAC is I think it's a much more balanced league. I think some of the teams at the top, the Lures, the Snyders, the Dwengers, have come down a notch, but the teams at the bottom, the Waynes and Concordias, they're much more competitive. So I think the SAC is a much more balanced league, and conversely, I think the NHC is really top-heavy with four great teams at the top of that. So, and then with the ACAC, Leo's dominating again.
Let's talk about the SAC because Chambers Field was one of the best places to be this past Friday night. It was Dwenger taking on Northside, and Northside was up 11 heading into the fourth quarter. Mike Fiacable and the Saints rallied the troops. They go on to get a victory 32-28 and stay atop that SAC race, undefeated on the season. What do you take from that? Because Northside owned that game for the first three quarters, but then again, Dwenger pulls it out in dramatic fashion.
29-7 run by Bishop Dwenger. And you know, Northside is allowing 31 points per game this season so far. Defensively, they have to fix some things, obviously. Otherwise, they have the athletic ability to beat a lot of teams, but when they play a really good team like Bishop Dwenger or Delta, you have to play better defense than what they're doing. They were up 21-3 in the third quarter and lost that game. That just cannot happen. And now on the other side of the ball offensively, Mike Levette was really, really tough again, 251 yards of total offense, but that's where it pretty much ended for the Northside attack. So they're going to have to get more weapons offensively to help him out, and then defensively, they're going to have to play better. And when you have a team down 21-3 in the third quarter, you have to end that game there. You have to run the ball. You have to work the clock. You can't turn the ball over. You have to put them down when you have an opportunity, and obviously they didn't do that.
And Northrop would have liked to put down Snyder because that was a game that was popping up all over if you were on Twitter, wherever you were watching on Friday night, because Northrop's leading that game at halftime.
Right.
Northrop is coming off a victory in overtime at Bishop Lures, so they're feeling good. They don't have Colin Brockhouse this season. We've talked about that a lot. But they made it a game against Snyder at Spooler Stadium. And Jabri Bramley had 3 touchdowns for Snyder to really bolster them in the second half. But what did we learn about Snyder, and what did we learn about Northrop on that Friday night?
Well, I think what we learned about Snyder is they have the mental toughness to withstand a really tough team coming back at them, a team that will not give up. And that will bode well because they play a really, really difficult schedule throughout the season and then into the postseason. But with Northrop, I'm really impressed with what they're doing. Remember 3 weeks ago when we were saying that Northrop stunk because they got blown out at East Noble? Well, now we've seen them bounce back and show mental toughness in beating Bishop Lures, and now they've hung with Snyder before falling late. And so I'm really impressed with the coaching job that Tim Martone's done at Northrop, and I'm really impressed with sophomore quarterback Mike Snyder, who the last 2 weeks has come off the bench in relief and played really, really well. Made critical throws against Bishop Lures to beat them in overtime, and then he played really, really well in relief of John McKinney last week against Snyder. And so kudos to the Northrop program and the kids for continuing to work hard and battle and not give up after that opening season defeat that was so demoralizing.
And one of the great Friday night comebacks took place up in Kendallville. I know that's where you were for the East Noble Knights taking on the Homestead Spartans, a game that no doubt will impact the NHC race as far as the championship goes. What did you see? Because Homestead down 14-7 at half, and then they finally would kick a field goal late in the fourth quarter to win it and then seal it with an interception late to earn the victory 17-14.
Well, they were down 14-0 in about the first 27 seconds of the game. I mean, Homestead could not get a stop defensively. Brandon Mabel was really, really running the ball well for East Noble, and they mixed in the pass with Bryce Wolf and got some end-arounds with Gray Fox. And so East Noble had its way with Homestead early on over those first two drives. But over the last 40 minutes and 39 seconds, East Noble never scored again. What Homestead did was they put 8 men in the box and said, you know what, we're going to stop Brandon Mabel, and we're going to make Bryce Wolf beat us. And you know what, he played well. He completed 15 of 25 passes, but once they took that running component out of the East Noble offensive attack, it was over. And I'll give credit to Homestead. This was a year that everybody else in the NHC was licking their chops and saying, you know what, we're going to knock Homestead off its pedestal. They graduated a lot of guys. They have young players in critical roles, and those young Spartans are really stepping up, and they're playing well on the defensive end in particular, which how many times have we talked about Homestead's defense over the years? Not a lot. It's always been the explosive offense. And they do have some really good players. Logan Ormsby's doing a nice job at quarterback, and a young sophomore wide receiver who's really lanky, Ben Skronik. He reminds me of Seth Coate. In fact, I asked Coach Zolman if he was this year's Seth Coate, and he said he might be. He's a really good wide receiver, and time again in the second half, they went to Skronik, and he played really, really well for Homestead. So Homestead, as much as everybody said they were going to take a step back, they're right there in the thick of things, undefeated again.